Hello! Welcome back to a weirdo episode of Gary Plays Darkest Dungeon, where I am taking a brief break from playing. I'm going to bank a bunch of episodes today as part of my plan, but I'm also going to do this tier list thing I talked about doing. And because I'm me, I have decided to, instead of doing traditional tiers, I am ranking the Darkest Dungeon heroes as if they are David Bowie albums. So, up here in the S rank, we got Low, Lodger, Scary Monsters. I will not be taking any feedback on my ranking of David Bowie albums. Here in the A tier, Aladdin Sane, Ziggy Stardust, Station to Station, Diamond Dogs. B, we got Black Star, Hunky Dory. And actually, if I change this to... I can actually do a clever thing here. Let's put Scary Monsters first. And then you'll know that it's S rank because it starts with S. Yeah, I recognize this is stupid. So A, Aladdin Sane, Black Star, Hunky Dory, Heroes, Outside, Let's Dance. We need a C one here. There's really not one, so we'll just go ahead and say like C. And then over here, this is, of course, the D rank. This does not have every... I would put the Darum Anthology here if I thought the Darum Anthology was D rank. It does not include anthologies pre-Hunky Dory albums. This doesn't have everything. I didn't put pinups in here. But Scary Monsters, Low, Lodger. Aladdin Sane, Ziggy Stardust, Station to Station, Diamond Dogs is my second tier. Third tier, Black Star, Hunky Dory, Heroes, Outside, Let's Dance. Fourth tier, Young Americans, Reality, The Next Day, Earthling, Black Tie, White Noise, and then the bottom tier, Tin Machine, which I did include for some reason. Hours, Tonight, Never Let Me Down. Even though Never Let Me Down has some bops. So let's get into it. Let's rank some classes in Darkest Dungeon. Now, here is a thing. I think all of the classes in Darkest Dungeon have their place. I don't think any of these are garbage. I'm going to put some at D because these are comparative rankings, right? But just know that I do generally think all of these classes have their place. If I put a class you really like somewhere, you disagree, that's fine. Just be respectful. You can sound off in the comments about disagreeing, but just don't be a jerk. I would appreciate that. So let's get into it. So we're going to start out with the Abomination. I'm going to do the thing also that... other tier people do. They start someone in the middle and then while they talk about them and they move them up. So, Abomination. Transform class. Really good. Doesn't require very much money investment. Is always going to start with all their skills. I think that's really good. Has a self-heal and a self-stress heal, which is good. Requires a lot of management because of how they stress out the party. You can give them a trinket to help with this. However, doing so is taking up a trinket slot, which is a bummer because trinket, they're very important. And yeah, I just, good DPS, pretty good skills. I actually like a non-transformed Abomination quite a bit with the blighting positions 2 and 3 and stunning positions 1 through 3. So some versatility there. I wish they could do those things from position 1. So when you switch them into the monster form, you didn't have to move them and stuff. Because this is a comparative ranking, I'm putting the Abomination in the C tier. I know that's probably controversial. It's a well-loved class. The flavor is amazing. They're very useful. But again, all of these classes I think are good. I don't think any of these classes are actually bad. I think it's a brilliantly balanced game. So take that with a grain of salt. Somebody's got to be in the C tier. Antiquarian. Kind of a gimmick class. Primarily there to help juice your economy. This feels more like a class that's almost in like patch form, like a way of doing game balance stuff, as opposed to as opposed to changing the game balance, adding it through a class and making it diegetic, which is something I respect. Cannot imagine I played this game before the Antiquarian got added. It is a much better game with the Antiquarian. I never feel bad if an Antiquarian dies. They have that Protect Me moves. You can send a low-level Antiquarian in with higher-level characters pretty easily, with a little intentionality and just kind of juice your economy without having any problems with their survivability. And if they die, it tends to be okay because they're not doing very much output. It's not going to impact your survivability that much. So I think Antiquarians are good. I'm going to keep the Antiquarian here at the B tier, at the Black Star, Hunky Dory, Heroes Outside Let's Dance tier. Even though it is not their good dungeon efficacy that gives them this. Arbalest. Got the Arbalest. Arbalest is a backline ranged character who attacks the backline and is a backup healer. In addition to that, and with the emphasis on backup, like it is hard to use an Arbalest as your frontline healer. This is a mark character, so synergizes with and deals out marks. So good in a marking party. Necessary for higher level swine prince, swine god fights. Really useful for that. For clearing the mark. Also can be pretty useful in a couple of other fights for clearing stun. So really good, good DPS, really great trinkets on the Arbalest. Big damage boost if in position 4, increasing crit, things like that. So really good trinkets. I'm going to give the Arbalest the A tier. So there are better classes out here, but I really like an Arbalest. Typically the way I do my party makeups is 2 frontline DPS, 1 healer, and then 1 support / stress healer. If I'm bringing in, if I need a stress healer, that 4th position is always a stress healer. If I don't need a stress healer, that 4th position tends to be like an agility hero or a damage over time hero or a stun hero, somebody who is kind of, related to utility. And Arbalest is one of my favorites. Arbalest are extremely good. Bounty Hunter. Big damage buff against humans. A bunch of mark synergies. Kind of just initially seems extremely versatile, but is actually kind of worse at its versatility options than you might think. So really great DPS hero, especially against humans, especially in a mark party. Has the ability to cause bleeds and stuns, but they're not very good. Like the stun percentage is not very good. The bleed percentage does not have nice hit kind of options or positional options. Can be used in position 3 well, which is pretty awesome actually. So you can actually take in a bounty hunter pretty easily as a utility player and really juice your DPS. Because I'm just going to say juice as a verb like a lot in this video. And if you're not here for it, buckle up, cupcake. It's time for juice. So really good at that. Weirdly kind of the word I'm looking for is swingy in terms of damage. It feels like I either do just absolutely astounding damage or absolutely dog shit damage with them. And there are lots of situations in which they can be kind of just much less effective. So obviously they get that bonus versus humans. That's extremely good. But if you're not taking advantage of the marks, you're not really taking advantage of their stuns or bleeds because they're not great. It just kind of becomes a basic fighter. Which is a little bit boring, so not bad. Also, I think one of the my less favorite flavors in the game, kind of backstory and flavor they have. They do one thing. It's right there in their title. So again, with the caveat that all of these things are good, put the Bounty Hunter on the C tier. Useful. I like having them. Crusader. Similar. Kind of that, but with different utilities and a little bit better at their utility stuff. So generally a frontline DPS character, a little bit worse at DPS than the Bounty Hunter, with and also with a specialized damage bonus, this time against Unholy, but with the added bonus of being a pretty good stunner, just in terms of percentage. Not great in terms of range, but good in terms of percentage. And then a good backup healer, but kind of more importantly, backup torch light crater, and pretty decent stress healer. There's only a couple stress healers in the game, and the Crusader is, I've just kind of now started experimenting with using the Crusader as a stress healer. Sorry about that, that burp that you had to hear me like struggle to contain there. But using a Crusader, not as a dedicated stress healer, but as a backup stress healer, is surprisingly not bad, especially at high levels and with like a trinket or two. They can actually be pretty good at that, while also doing what I consider to be like very consistent damage. It doesn't feel as swingy. It's not quite as high highs as the Bounty Hunter, but it feels like they do fairly consistent damage. They also have one of my favorite trinkets in the Color of Madness. You can get the non-Euclidean hilt, which gives a bonus to damage, maximum HP, adds a blight to your attacks, which is just real weird, but also adds a very small chance of targeting a random character, which is a huge pain and can fuck you over, but I think is fun. I think the Crusader's right where he needs to be. Right here in the B tier. I don't like them as much as the Arbalest, not nearly as versatile, but very cool. And I like, and I also have affection for Dismas and Renaud, the two canonical characters you start off with in the game. Flagellant. Haven't had much opportunity to use them in the Let's Play. This was introduced in the Crimson Court DLC. This is a bleed character, kind of a combination between, also like an interesting hybrid character. So can kind of do lots of stuff. There to soak up hits. There to kind of take stress upon himself, take bad things, debuffs and such upon himself in order to help the party. So team player in that respect. Very big bleeds, which is a hindrance that all of his attacks kind of calculated into the DPS that they have for that is the bleed damage, which means that if you're taking him into the ruins, especially, but in the cove, it's kind of not a great time because all those enemies are bleed resistant. Like you don't take a flagellant to the cove really. Like you can, it's not a good idea. That is, as far as the major areas of the game, that's half of them. Like, yes, the Crimson Court is there and the Farmstead is there and the Darkest Dungeon. Those are all kind of specialty areas. Not being able to really perform very well in half of the areas really does a lot of damage to what is otherwise an incredibly cool class that has just like absolutely amazing flavor. Really versatile. Has an interesting stress heal that heals more stress and then takes it upon himself, so he takes stress. And similarly has a heal, like a regen effect that he puts on heroes and can take bleed. If you put bleed resistance trinkets on him, that's really great. You can kind of use those powers or that healing power mostly for free. And his whole thing is he gets better when he is lower health. Like he gets a buff. His affliction has more positive sides than negative sides, even though it is still an affliction. He's still going to disobey your orders, still going to attack your party members, all that garbage. Really interesting. I think in terms of like actual efficacy, he would be at a C, but I'm going to keep him at a B because of flavor, like personality counts. And yeah, but I think I would put him at a C otherwise, just in terms of usefulness, because of him being not useful in like half of the, half the main areas, but a cool class. I'm always happy to have a flagellant. And honestly, very powerful, and a flagellant landed me my first and only countess kill in the Crimson Court. So for that, I will always be grateful. Grave Robber. I find the Grave Robber to be a very weird class. The Grave Robber is a dodge kind of crit based hero. So the idea is high dodge, not very many hit points, but like will not get hit very often and not that much damage, but will crit a lot. With the right trinkets, I can make this work. I love the flavor of the Grave Robber. She's sassy, which I like. It's weird though, because she throws blight as well. I don't know why that fits so weirdly into her skill set. Like, it's not a great blight. It ends up being a position 1 thing she can attack from the back. It can be really good. Like, you can do good stuff with it. But it ends up not being super useful. And her trinket game favors one of those things versus another, is either like kind of a crit trinket thing or a blight thing, and like a blight build grave robber just seems really weird to me. I can't really imagine it. She has bonus damage. She has a lot of weird like synergies where like once an enemy has a status affliction, she does more damage to them, which is interesting. I think harder to take advantage of than like a straight up mark, which is a version of that that just kind of makes a little bit more intuitive sense. So this is possibly controversial. Putting the grave robber as the first D rank that we got, again while saying that I like all of the classes in the game. Happy to use grave robbers. I will continue to use grave robbers. All of these classes I will use. They're all my beautiful children. But gonna put grave robber at D. Hellion. Hellion, I think, is an interesting character because it feels like she has a concept that is unique that you can largely ignore. And that concept being that her skills are very powerful, but tend to come with a debuff. So when you use anything other than her basic attack, or most things other than her basic attack, she'll get a debuff, either to her speed or damage. So like, yes, Barbaric Yop, which is a double stun on the first row, first two characters, is really powerful. Like, it's really efficient. Like, losing one of my turn to deny the enemy 2 turns, obviously, clear advantage. But then you get a 20% damage debuff for a couple rounds. That's a bummer. The trick is, though, like, so first of all, the Hellion can reach the back row with Iron Swan, which makes her key for a bunch of boss fights where the enemy hides out in the back row. Iron Swan does not debuff you. You can really easily use the debuff skills when you need it. So I'm going to Yop when I need it. I'm going to bleed out when I need it. And that can be like when fights are going to end, like hallway battles as opposed to bosses. And then when you need to go the long haul, just use her bread and butter attacks. Like, if it bleeds, Iron Swan, and the regular one, the Strike, and just get a really, really good DPS character. The big downside to her, to balance that out as well, is that she doesn't have tons of HP. So she's a little squishier than most frontliners. Like, she wants to be in position 1 very badly. That's where Iron Swan works. She doesn't have that much HP, though, which means, but you can address that with trinkets. Yes, that's a trinket slot. It's kind of a bummer, but it's a good solution. And she ends up being just so powerful and so key to so many boss fights. My first S rank, Hellion. So I love Hellions. I think they're really good, really great. Highwayman, a melee ranged kind of hybrid character. Also has some bleed in there. Incredible skills on the Highwayman. The only skill that I don't really, there's 2 of them I don't really like Distracting Shot or whatever it's called, and then Grape Shot Blast are both not great. Everything else is incredible. Using a Highwayman, Duelist Advance is one of the most efficient skills in the game. Moves your character forward, which synergizes with another one of his skills. Activates the riposte, and that's really good. It's a strong riposte. It's riposte, riposte, riposta. Really, really good version. And then puts him in position 1 to do point blank shot, which does a lot of damage. So putting a position 2 Highwayman is my favorite secondary DPS character as kind of a dancing partner for whoever you have in front, where he just duelist advanced, point blank shot, duelist advance, point blank shot, back and forth. It just works. Does tons of damage, really great dodge. Not a whole lot of hit points, but not too bad. Highwaymen are incredible. S rank. This right here, the Hellion and the Highwayman as like a front line is killer. So, really, really good. And Dismas. I love Dismas. I love the original 2 jabronis. They said those are a scary monster tier. Low lodger tier. Houndmaster. Third stress healer we're going to be talking about in the game. Interesting character class. Very versatile. Really good range. The Hound's Rush hits all 4 ranks. So that's as long as you don't have the Houndmaster in rank 1, you can do that. Really good stun with the Blackjack. And there's a really good stun trinket. You saw me fail to get it last episode, but that is a really low downside, high upside stun trinket for him. Is a bleed hero, which synergizes with his damage bonus. He gets a damage bonus against beasts. So you don't want to be taking him into the ruins, particularly, or the cove, but not as much as the flagellant. I feel like the damage over time is not as factored into his stats as is with the flagellant. Like I think you can take him into the cove and it's okay. Partly because of that versatility. He can do that. He has a protect, which is turns him into kind of a dodge tank. He gains a bonus to his dodge. You can stack that. That's really good. Cry Havoc, which is his stress heal, which is interesting. It works the only full party stress heal. That's not true. The Arbalest has a really shitty one. There are a couple other really shitty ones, but it's the main full party stress heal, which doesn't get good until you throw some trinkets on it. But if so, there are just so many fights where it's like the last couple turns, I can kill this guy with whoever's going last. I may as well take this roll to get rid of some stress, and works really well. Dog treats are an interesting mechanic. It becomes an inventory slot that is a bummer to have, but are really useful in bosses. Big boost to accuracy, and getting to the boss, firing a dog treat, and then just focusing with like a Hellion and the Houndmaster on the back row tends to make pretty short work of the main game bosses. Especially if you can stack a bleed on them. His bleed is really garbage. Hound's Harry is not a very good skill. Provides a very low level bleed to the whole enemy party. It can be good, but it's not going to do very much damage. So he's got some really good skills and some skills. Lick Wounds I don't really use. His self heal. Like yes, it's useful, but I don't know. One of the things that juices this guy. So a little spoiler. I'm putting the Houndmaster and the Aladdin Sane, Ziggy Stardust, Station to Station, Diamond Dogs, A rank. And the thing that juices him is his camping skills. I think this is arguably, as far as the non-buff, there's kind of like two different kinds of camping skills. We didn't really talk about that with both of my other S tier people, but both the Hellion and the Highwayman have absolutely A+ camp skills. They can just increase their damage and buff themselves all to shit. Same thing with the Arbalest. The Arbalest has Marching Plan, gives big speed buff to the whole party. That's really good. Restring Crossbow, really great damage and crit percentage for her. Houndmaster has the best, tied with the Highwayman for the best ambush prevention. Prevents the ambush and increases scouting, or lowers surprise chance, actually, that your party will be surprised. Has a plus 30% scouting camp skill. Has Therapy Dog, which is a full party, decent stress relief skill, and has the Hound's Comfort or whatever, which is a self stress release skill, which is just very cheap and efficient. It's like 30 stress or 20 stress for not very many respite points. So I think that if we weren't looking at camping skills at all, Houndmaster would probably go in the B tier with Black Star. However, with the camping skills, gonna put Houndmaster in the A tier. When we get to the end of this, maybe I'm gonna shuffle around, see if anything looks goofy. But so far, this is about to my. What do you think? About halfway through here, a little bit more in that. Got the Jester here. Jester is an interesting class. It is the primary stress healer in the game and the primary buff class. My favorite Jester is Position 3 Jester. There are kind of two builds for the Jester. Position 3, he tosses out bleeds from time to time. He has a good bleed hero, but again, you have to be going in one of those areas where bleeds count. But he also just heals stress, a single target high stress heal, or does a party-wide buff that buffs accuracy, which is really important, and then buffs speed, which is very important, and then also crit percentage, which is awesome. So really good buffs. I love a Position 3 Jester. That build really works for me. The Finale solo Dirk Stab build, where he's kind of dancing between the front and back of the party, building up to do Finale for really big damage, does not work for me. So he's kind of like a unitasker, to put it in Alton Brown terms. Like, if I have a Jester, it's almost always just a Position 3 Jester that's there to keep stress down. I use them a lot in the Farmstead, because you need stress healing for that. I use them a lot in the Crimson Court, because those are really long missions, and I like to do them in one if I can, do them in 1 week, which means keeping stress down, which means a Jester. So extremely good. I wish they were a little bit, like, I would totally replace Solo, probably, with another buff, like another more interesting buff. Like, that would kind of get into some of the other support classes kind of zone. But it stops them from being astounding. However, they're necessary. Anything necessary is going to get into the A tier. So I can't. There are parts of the game that are impossible without the Jester. You cannot get very far in the farmstead. I tried it with a Houndmaster. I've tried it with a Crusader. The stress healing is just not concentrated enough. It doesn't work. So Jester, I'm gonna give A tier, and the bleed is no joke. Slice off is a good skill. Really good trinkets as well. Really good camping skills. I forgot to talk about that for stress relief. If I didn't talk about anyone else's camping skills up until this point, it's because I found them generally unremarkable. Jester has good buffs for his party at camp and also has turn back time, which is the single best single target stress relief skill that you can do on somebody else. And then also every rose, which I think just cures everybody. So they're really good. Happy with him in the A tier. Leper. The controversy. Lepers are, their gimmick is a couple things. Just very high DPS and HP in exchange for some real serious limitations. Those limitations being really bad base accuracy. A leper's going to miss a lot without trinkets, and then being totally useless in position 3 and 4. That first thing with the trinket bothers some other Darkest Dungeon people more than it bothers me. I've kind of read into the discourse and the meta, all that stuff, because I'm a big dork. And when I get into a game, I get really into it. So I saw people really bothered by him needing an accuracy trinket. I don't really care. Near the end, when you're doing champion level dungeons, almost everybody gets an accuracy trinket. Like everyone gets a sun ring. It just means for one of these guys, if they get like natural swing, I'm going to lock it in, and then they're more or less golden on that front. The thing that I think sucks more about them is the fact that they're so useless in position 3 or 4, and they have such low move. So they can only move up 1, which means that like a surprise attack or a shambler fight or something really ends up making these guys suck. I use them sometimes in the farmstead. There's an enemy in the farmstead that's this big horse that shuffles your party. You get your leper in the back row. It's 2 turns, it's 2 turns and you can have other characters use their turn to move him up, but it's 2 turns before you can do anything. That's huge. That's a really big deal for this. And all it would take, I don't know if it unbalance him. To make him really good would be one of his moves moves him up 1, even if it was one of his buffs. Like he has a bunch of really good self buffs that are very strong in the farmstead because they last for a whole battle. If he did like withstand, and withstand moved him forward 1, that would just make the world of difference to him. As is, going into the D tier, my friend. I love his big damage. I love, very useful for some bosses. As the DPS, like you got the Swine King in front of you. Having a leper in the front row is a good time. You're going to do good. But I hate him as a dungeon companion because getting shuffled is so devastating. He's so garbage in the back. He just can't do anything. Sucks. Man-at-Arms. Another utility player. Defensive-minded utility player. Has some pretty decent attacks. Has a really good guard, which buffs his protection. Which is, I think, preferable to the Houndmasters, which buffs dodge, just because later dungeons, enemies get very accurate. So protection is more useful. Okay riposte, but activating it is like a turn tax. It's not like, Dismas does Duelist Advance, and that's a reasonable attack. The riposte skill, Retribution, that the Man-at-Arms has, does so little damage. The idea being it lasts for 2 turns, the protection lasts for 2 turns, you ping pong between those 2 things, and if either of 2, targets in your party get hit, he'll riposte. The riposte doesn't do very much damage either for him. So I don't really like Man-at-Arms for offensive. I love them for defensive. So I love the guard. I love his passive buffs. So bolster's really good, party-wide buff and stress resistance. The other one, I can't remember the name of it, but it gives whoever's being guarded gets bonus damage. But more importantly, everybody gets big stat ups for that. And the person who's guarded getting extra damage is really good. Position 4 Man-at-Arms is something I like to fuck around with. It's kind of a gimmick, but I think it works really well. He has really good camping skills. So weapons practice, that's legendary, super good. Other just kind of party-wide buffs are extremely good. I also love the flavor. I haven't talked about the flavor for a little while. That actually, I could have knocked the Jester down one for flavor because he looks like a juggalo. He's funny. Like I like the stuff with him, but I don't like his juggalo looks. And the Houndmaster probably could have gone up one from flavor, maybe not to S rank, but I love the Houndmaster because doggo. But the Man at Arms has amazing flavor. Like I like this. You know, he's not a horrible person. Like a lot of these people have these tortured past. You can learn about from the comics they put on the website for them. This old man who is a veteran, who's going through and doing this kind of stuff. Like, you know, like old former soldiers who still end up having to work, end up like guarding a Kmart or some shit. I don't know. Necessary for several boss fights. The Sonorous Prophet, which marks out an enemy. Several boss fights that are in the Darkest Dungeon, specifically one where everyone gets a trinket that protects them from something, but you only get 3 of those. So the Man at Arms needs to guard everyone else. I love Man at Arms. S rank. Love the Man at Arms. Musketeer. Don't have these in my current playthrough. This is a Kickstarter exclusive reskin of the Arbalist, who uses a gun. The trick to the Musketeer is that while they are a reskin and have the same skills, they have different trinkets, and the trinkets are a little worse. And once you have both of them installed, you get a bunch of, like, you're getting trinkets you can't, you know, oh, I got the Arbalist version of this, not the Musketeer, but I've trained up a Musketeer. Lame. So, like, Arbalist is really good, but the Musketeer, I recommend not installing it. It's just visual and just not that exciting. You know, if you could install the Musketeer as a substitute for the Arbalist, like, that'd be one thing if you just preferred one or the other, but you always have to have both, and it just pollutes the space. Cultist. Cultist is a weird character class, positioned and kind of thought of as a healer, and probably is the secondary healer in the game, but that heal is really inconsistent. You know, you've seen me play and get lots of 0 heals. It is a legendary Darkest Dungeon thing of, like, you really need a really good heal. You heal for 0 and land the bleed with weird restoration, or you are like, I might as well heal, and you get a crit heal for 37, and the person only had 2 hit points missing. Happens all the time in Darkest Dungeon. So kind of a bummer. I don't really like occultists as healers. They get a bonus damage versus Eldritch targets, which a lot of time are in the cove, a little bit in the Weald. That's good. Good skill set other than that. Has a Weakening Curse, which I like. The Leper has a version of this as well. Intimidate, but I like Weakening Curse quite a bit to lower the DPS of enemies. It kind of ends up being a nice complement to the Man at Arms for some of those fights with high damage, either with the Brigand Wolf or with the Sonorous Prophet. When they do a lot of damage to a single target, you debuff that, you protect that person, you can make that really manageable. Good backline. I like Abyssal Artillery quite a bit. I like his stun is the best single target stun in the game as far as percentage goes. With trinkets, that becomes basically, you can, like, stun people it seems like you're not supposed to stun, or double stun enemies. So stun them 2 times in a row, even when they have the resistance to it. So that's really good. I never quite have, like, a place for them because I still can't shake thinking of them as healers. And I never don't take a Vestal because I think Vestals are much better healers. Really, really wonderful flavor on the Occultist. I'm going to keep the Occultist right where they're at. I think the Occultist is a B tier hero. They can be very good, but again, all of these can be very good. Yeah. Plague Doctor. Amazing flavor. This is a blight damage over time character who is also very versatile. Has a party or an enemy shuffle, double back row stun, a bleed attack as well as a blight attack. But bread and butter is going to be blight and does it better than anyone else. Can also cure diseases. I did mention that with the Grave Robber, but Grave Robber can as well. Cure diseases when you're at camp, which is useful. Has the problem if you're going into a blight resistant zone, you're going to the Warrens or Weald, loses a lot of efficacy. So it has that same kind of issue as the Flagellant. However, I'm going to do Plague Doctor at A rank because Flagellant, they're very similar classes. The Flagellant is a lot more versatile. The Plague Doctor just ends up, the bosses that I want to DPS down, kind of in the back row or what have you, tend to be in the ruins and the cove, where bleed is not as useful. So I love DPSing down the Siren. Getting a big stack of DPS on the Drowned crew is a good way to counteract their kind of gimmick. DPSing down the Sonorous Prophet is really useful because you can hit that back rank. And yeah. So, and also just part of it's just like a flavor thing. I love this like disease carrier, there. Also a little bit more versatile in terms of curing blight and bleed. So the flagellant can do that as well, but they take it upon themselves, which is a bummer. He can just kind of cure it. So in certain areas, if you don't have a lot of provisions, or if you're running a suicide squad, throwing a plague doctor in there is not bad because he can take the place of bandages and antivenoms. But this, I will fully admit, this is like a bias. I just like them. So thus giving the edge. Shieldbreaker. Really interesting character. A blight damage character, but does really good damage even if they can't land blights. Has a couple gimmick moves. One which three gimmick moves. One that breaks stealth, which is cool. One that penetrates protection, which is cool if an enemy's protecting. Another one that adds Aegis to the shield breaker for 2 turns, which is really cool. Is a dancing character, is constantly going to be moving forward and back with all their moves, which is tricky. It actually, your instinct might be to pair them with another dancing character. So having a shield breaker and a highwayman next to each other, but that's actually a mistake because they're going to step on each other's feet to keep the metaphor going. The duelist advance moves the shield breaker into the second position, so he can only do the forward move, which then puts the highwayman out of position to do point blank shot. So you want to put him, pair him with another frontliner who is steady. So good with a man at arms, good with a crusader, good with a bounty hunter, good with a leper, good with a hellion. Even though the hellion is not great with dancing because the hellion likes to be in position 1. But really good with those other ones. Really great range. Their basic attack can hit the full zone, all 4 spaces. That's great. The big kind of gimmick, I guess, for them, the way that they have the flashbacks. So you've definitely run into that as I have been playing the game. And it has kind of fucked me over. I like the flavor of that, and it's a way to get Aegis skills, which are Aegis skills. I keep wanting to say Aegis skills, which like I already have. I don't need those. But get Aegis skills, which are really useful, and I love having just a couple Aegis scales. I keep saying scales in the back pocket for boss fights. I'm going into the darkest dungeon. I might take 4 Aegis scales if I have them, because it can mean the difference between losing or keeping a character. I'm going to go fight the Shrieker. I like to take an Aegis scale with me. So really good in that respect. The flashbacks are a pain in the ass. And you don't always want them. Like I need to, in this Let's Play, in previous Let's Plays, I've been better about thinking about it. In this Let's Play, not always been best about like thinking about when I want to take one of these in, which you kind of need to do. But I'm going to give the Shield Breaker A tier. Really great class, tons of flavor, really fun, good camp skills. Not great camp skills, but good camp skills. And I like that pathway to get those scales. Finally, our Vestal, dedicated healer class, also good at stunning. Pretty wanting in terms of DPS. This should surprise no one. I don't think that there's really a way to play the game without Vestals. Like, you could, but being able to do a full concentrated heal that is consistent, and more importantly than that, doing a party heal is just so versatile. Like it's really good when you're just trying to get somebody off death's door, but it's also just really good. You have like an extra turn. Everyone's down maybe 5 or 6 hit points and you get them back 1 to 2. And you start throwing some trinkets on the Vestal and you start getting heals for 7, 8, 9, 13 for single heals, 5 or 6 for party heals. That's really significant. Okay camp skills, kind of bad offensive skills. Like, Judgment, which does the life drain. That's the one I tend to use. Hand of Light, Mace Bash. The other one, which name is escaping me, I can basically just not use. Like one of them buffs her for later, which it's like, well, I'm not going to be using her offensively. I'm probably going to be healing next turn. The other one I think gets bonus damage versus Unholy. And it's like, yeah, that can be useful. But again, it's very rare that I don't need to heal. If I get 4 actions per turn, one of them on healing is generally about right. So undeniably S tier though, because I train so many of them because they're really useful and they help me keep my party alive. And you can see from the way that I play is that I'm very intentional about when I'm throwing away characters. I don't throw away characters that I put investment into very easily. If I started giving people equipment and skills, I want to keep them alive. I want them to come home. It's always easier and cheaper to do that than to just let them go. And the Vestal makes that the most possible. Yeah. So looking at this just kind of before we wrap up the episode to see if I'm comfortable with it. Keeping in mind the fact that I think everybody is good in this is possible. I might do like that. Like I love Houndmasters. They're very versatile, but I don't really master any particular thing. I've had a lot of good memories with them and I like the flavor a lot, but that might be a little bit more accurate. Maybe. No, I still want to. I like the Plague Doctor more than I like the Flagellant. Flagellants are incredibly good. It's just I think I like the Plague Doctor more, so I still want to have that difference there. Arbalist, really versatile. Jester is the only like really necessary hero that I think is not getting an automatic S rank. Good. I think this is good. This is almost like this is a really good party right here, actually. The Highwaymen and the Hellion are going to step on each other's toes a little bit, but here, yeah. I feel good about this. So this is my tier, my Darkest Dungeon class tier list. Happy if you disagree, feel free to comment. Just be nice. Don't be an asshole about that. It's not worth it. No opinion has ever been changed through a text field. And yeah, thank you for this episode or for watching. And we'll be back at a regular time in a couple days for a regular episode of Darkest Dungeon.